प्रोफेसर नंदिनी साहू जी का एक छोटा परिचय देना चाहती हूँ। यद्यपि इनका व्यक्तित्व तो बड़ा है, लेकिन फिर भी मैं एक औपचारिक रूप से छोटा परिचय आपके सामने रखना चाहती हूँ। प्रोफेसर नंदिनी साहू, वाइस चांसलर, हिंदी यूनिवर्सिटी, वेस्ट बंगाल, द Amazon best-selling author, is a major voice in contemporary Indian English literature. She has accomplished her doctorate in English literature under the guidance of late Professor Niranjan Mohanty, Professor of English, Viswabharati, Shantiniketan. She has been widely published in India, USA, UK, Africa, Italy, Australia, and Pakistan. Apart from numerous other literary awards, she is a triple gold medalist in English literature. She has received the gold medal from the Honorable Vice President of India for the contributions to English studies in India. She is the recipient of the prestigious Michael Madhusudan Academy Award, Lifetime Achievement Award, Tagore Samman, and honorary fellowship by International Academy of Ethics, India. She is the author and editor of 23 books. She is a very well-known name in English literature and English studies. She is the former director, School of Foreign Languages, Professor of English at Indira Gandhi National Open University, New Delhi. Is currently the Vice Chancellor, Hindi University, West Bengal. Her areas of research interest cover Indian literature, new literatures, indigenous knowledge systems, Hindu studies, American literature, folk literature, children's literature, and critical theory. She is the chief editor, founder editor of Interdisciplinary Studies in India, Folklore of Cultural Studies, Hindu Knowledge System, etc. Madam Nandini Sahu, we are very fortunate to have you in our refresher course, and we are eager to be benefited by your vast knowledge and experience. We, both the coordinators and Hindi Department of University of Calcutta, MMTTC, Malvi Mission Teacher Training College, and all 110 participants of this refresher course, we all welcome you with folded hands. Thank you very much, ma'am. Please confer your address to our refresher course participants. Thank you, ma'am. Welcome. Welcome to the course.
Thank you so much. सभी को नमस्कार.
Welcome. We are very happy. आपको यहाँ पाकर हम लोग बहुत ही गौरवान्वित महसूस कर रहे हैं. Welcome, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much. नमस्कार सभी को. रमा प्रवेश जी and राजश्री जी. राम प्रवेश जी. Okay, okay. Has yes, विकास भवन में किसी का नाम रमा प्रवेश है, तो मैं थोड़ा सा सोची आपका भी नाम वही होगा. Okay. So Ram Pravesh ji, namaskar Rajeshri ji, and सभी को नमस्कार. Very good morning. I am happy to be a part of this refresher course, which I hope is not a necessary evil. Usually people do the refresher courses because they have to. So I will try to keep my lecture a bit of engaging and light, and I will try to make it more interactive. They have already introduced me very generously, so I don't need to talk anything about my work. But yes, when people get to hear that she is a professor of English and director of foreign languages from Delhi IGNOU, and then now vice chancellor of Hindi University, they get a bit of confused that professor of English in Hindi University, why? So maybe I have to start with that. Hindi to me is not just a language. Hindi is a culture. And also, Hindi University is not about Hindi language per se. It's about all the Indian languages and the collaboration, the flexibility, and the inclusivity between languages. So, with that in mind, probably the government of West Bengal had introduced Hindi University, and I am the founder vice chancellor of Hindi University. We have multiple departments as of now. I think there are two Hindi universities in the country, two or three maximum. We are one of them, and we have courses in history, and then we have political science, then translation studies, then we have Hindi, MA Hindi definitely, and now we are working on a new department on comparative world literatures, where we are planning to take the 24 scheduled languages of India as our MA courses. And we are also planning to introduce a new department on foreign languages, where we can create some comparative pedagogy between Indian languages and the foreign languages. Also, probably we will introduce one MA in folk literature and tribal studies, because my specialization is folk literature, and also folk literature is a very upcoming area of research and pedagogy. All of you, or some of you, might be also working on folk literature or lok sahitya. So you will understand how our cultural heritages, uh, and then our folk literatures, our tribal literatures should be a part of our universities and the syllabi of the universities. This is very, very important. So, as a folklorist myself, and definitely as the administrator of a university, I have put the proposal, the possibility of introducing folk literature in our university. And your program is basically about languages, keeping Hindi as the key point. Today, I will focus on that. I will use the interdisciplinary framework that combines linguistics and cultural history, and then translation studies, philosophy, and digital humanities. So I will try to investigate the intricate relationships between Hindi heritage and humanities. How Hindi is a part of our humanities will be my point of focus. Uh, During Hindi Divas, many people celebrate Hindi as a language and a culture and a heritage. But also, there are some people or some institutions who try to present Hindi in a rather negative light by telling that English or some other languages, basically English, is a predator language for Hindi. English and Hindi are complementary to each other. No language in the world, in fact, can be a predator to another language. Languages are like sisters, they are like rivers, they flow in one, yes. So they flow into one ocean, which is language studies. When I designed the MA program in folklore and culture studies for Indira Gandhi National Open University, IGNO, where I worked last 20 years as a professor and a director, I designed the MA program in folklore and culture studies, where we have taken so many texts from Hindi literature in English translation. So, translation is one of the most important research areas for all of us. We, being a part of a country where 24 scheduled languages are there and 7,000 tribal and folk languages are there, if we do not give importance to uh, translation studies, then probably we are going to miss out on the rich history and literature of all our Indian languages. We cannot restrict ourselves. We have to be flexible, we have to open up, and then we have to be in a position to understand and accept each other's language. And then we don't need a link language. Somebody told me that English should be the link language between all the languages. Then somebody said Hindi should be the link language between all Indian languages. I don't think we need a link language. For example, if somebody is a Gujarati and somebody is Tamil, in order to understand each other's languages, they should learn each other's languages rather than using any particular language, English or Hindi, to link them. And how do they learn a language? Learning a language is very scientific. One has to go step by step. Like I came to West Bengal only in January, and I started learning Bengali language. I did some online courses, and then self learning I'm doing. And I think to learn Bengali language, it's very simple. If you are Odia, like I'm an Odia, so you go to some software, some websites, and you just find out learning Bengali through Odia. You don't need Hindi, or you don't need English, or you don't need Gujarati. You just need to know the two languages that you are planning to cater to, the two languages that you are trying to learn. Maybe that is the best way to learn a language, rather than using any particular language that can overpower or empower any other language. If you look at it in a new historicist way, new historicism is a literary theory. You know, many of you might have already read it. If you look at Raymond Williams and the ideas of new historicism, when you read two texts parallelly, say history and English, or history and literature, it happens that you prefer or you overpower, I mean, one text can overpower the other. The same applies to language learning. When you are learning two languages, you have to give equal weightage and equal importance to both the languages, so that no language overpowers the other. So, with this in my mind, when I designed the MA program in folklore and culture studies for my university, IGNO, if you look at IGNO website and you type MA FCS, MA in folklore and culture studies, the courses are MFC 001 to MFC 009. There are 9 courses for 64 credits. I'm trying to convert it to 80 credits. One or two courses deal with dying languages, language death. Now, what is language death? Initially in the world, there were 6 lakh languages, and today there are only 6,000 or so scheduled languages. I mean, what happened to rest of the languages? They died a natural death in the absence of anyone preserving or documenting those languages. So these kind of workshops and programs, orientation courses and refresher courses should be a platform where people from various disciplines come in a truly multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary manner, and then they try to reimagine languages, to preserve and document languages in terms of their literature, their poetry, and their orality. And today we are going through a very beautiful age where information and communication technology, like digital humanities and ICT based learning, those things may help us to document and preserve the endangered and the dying languages. Probably at the end of this workshop, all of you will be in a position to come out with some research or maybe some project where you are working on various languages in the comparative methodology, or you are using digital humanities, post truth, and you are becoming instrumental in the preservation of languages. I'm sure that all of you are teaching in some universities and colleges, and your students must be from various backgrounds. India being a multilingual and a multicultural country, so the way you address your students, they are carrying it to their future. So you have to be very careful with what kind of cultural inheritance or what kind of cultural interchange or exchange you are initiating the students into, and you are examining the politics of language, identity, and representation in your classroom. Uh, Hindi is a very rich and a beautiful language. Hindi literature is extremely rich. In Hindi University, in the Department of Hindi, we have many teachers who are working again on the classical and the folk languages of Hindi related to Hindi. They are also working on comparative pedagogy through translation studies. Uh, Translation studies is also a department in our university where we have teachers from Hindi and English and Bangla. So they teach translation theory. They are dealing with translation theory. And the students are also from various backgrounds. Many students are from Bihar. So maybe 50-60% of the students are from Bengal, and many are from Bihar and Orissa and Jharkhand. Even a couple of them are from North India. Some of them are from South India. So handling a classroom like this, which is multilingual and multicultural, our teachers again are multilingual. They have to use many languages. So the key point that they use in their translation studies classroom is literary theory, translation theory, translatability, untranslatability, and those kind of things, and cultural translation, textual translation, then translation from lexicon to lexicon, and then transliteration and transcreation. And all these things deal with languages, the flexibility of languages. There was a time when we were students. I remember that during 90s when I was a student in Orissa, we used to have intradisciplinary research. Intradisciplinary is within a discipline, like working on an English literary text, within the text, the meaning of the text, or the interpretation of the characters. That's all we used to do. Our uh, orientation was very, very simplistic. But with the introduction of the cultural studies and culture studies into literature classrooms, we got into post colonialism, post modernism, we got into new historicism, cultural materialism, and then you come to the contemporary scenario, we are into digital humanities and post truth. Such complex theories like we have green cultural studies. So we are talking about the green, the environment in literature, study of environment in literature. We have ocean humanities, blue humanities. We are talking about water. Like you look at our Indian literature and mythology, you have Kurma Avatar, Kashyap Avatar, so many texts, our Ramayana, Mahabharata, or Bhagavad Puran, and all of that, where the water narratives are used. And then coming to the contemporary scenario, preservation of rivers, environmentalists, eco-feminists, eco-critics, they are working on the preservation of the water, preservation of rivers, cleaning of rivers, using river as a communication. So those things come under blue humanities and ocean humanities. Literature departments have become very flexible from interdisciplinary. They have gotten into interdisciplinary. What is interdisciplinary? When two disciplines look at each other with and exchange their perspectives. And transdisciplinary is when two disciplines borrow the ideas from each other. Like, suppose you are Hindi discipline and I am English discipline. If we borrow our ideas from each other. And then multidisciplinary is when you create a new discipline by borrowing ideas from very many disciplines. That is multidisciplinary. So I would recommend you being teachers and teaching the future generations and you being young teachers, you should emphasize on multidisciplinary research. And under multidisciplinary research in language and literature departments like yours and mine, like Hindi departments and English departments, I am from the English department. So we are getting into so many interesting things, like I already told you. We have green studies, we have blue humanities, we have ocean humanities, we have medical humanities. So many medical texts are being taught in the literature departments. The University of Hyderabad had one course long back when I was a student, or maybe a little bit after that, when I had started working. Hyderabad University had a course on AIDS studies, AIDS as a disease, AIDS studies. So they were dealing with the physical and the psychological and the emotional aspects of some AIDS patients. And they had taken case studies, how somebody handles the disease like AIDS. And then coming to the contemporary scenario, we have seen that during COVID, so much of COVID literature came. People talked about COVID as a disease, and COVID as a psychology, COVID as survival, or COVID as so many things came up during COVID. And then lots of texts they came with medical humanities, then hospitality studies, and then medicine also became a part of the discussion in literature departments. So, what I'm trying to tell you is now literature and language departments have become multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary, and interdisciplinary, and we have taken the help of theorization from culture studies and cultural studies. We have taken linguistics and the dialogues between different languages with other languages and their knowledge systems to analyze our development of India's heterogenic, uh, so many things that our literature departments are talking. So today my research questions are also a bit of complex. The first question that I would like you to address in this program is, how can the study of Hindi as a heritage, Hindi is not as a language but Hindi as a heritage, be redefined within the border frameworks of humanities and civilizational studies? Can Hindi affect civilizational studies? Then the next question that you should address through this program is, in what ways does Hindi exemplify the inclusive and the dialogic ethos of Indian linguistic traditions? That is another question. What are the intersections between Hindi and other Indian languages in shaping a shared cultural and epistemological heritage? That is one question that you can ask. We will address all the questions one by one coming 1 hour. And how can contemporary literatures, especially comparative literatures, translation studies, and digital humanities, they revitalize the study of Hindi and its heritage? Then the next question that probably we can address: what roles can Hindi play in fostering intellectual and communication and interdisciplinary communication in the age of globalization and technology driven learning systems? So these are the things that we will try to address coming 1 hour. If anyone wants me to address any particular issue, then maybe you can just put it here. Anyone wants me to address any particular issue? Shall I proceed? Okay. So Hindi, yes, somebody has
जी डॉक्टर
unmuted.
नीरज मिश्रा, आप अपनी बात रखें.
जी.
सर अनम्यूट कीजिए.
नीरज जी आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है.
जी, आपकी अनम्यूट कीजिए.
अच्छा. Ma'am, good morning. Multidisciplinary, you have just mentioned that it creates a discipline out of so many disciplines. And how it is different from transdisciplinary? I have just skipped. I could not get it properly. Please.
Okay.
Ji.
Okay. See, intradisciplinary is working within a discipline. Like when we were students during 90s, we were taught how to just critically examine a text like characterization. Suppose Shakespeare. So who are the important women characters in Shakespeare? So we used to write about how women are so important, little bit of gender, but we didn't even use the word gender studies at that time. So that was intradisciplinary study. We used to say that Shakespearean women were powerful women. They overpowered their men, and women had a major role to play in the plot. We confined ourselves to the plot, not even the structure, to the plot of Shakespeare. But then, as I said, with the introduction of culture studies and cultural studies into literature departments, we started being interdisciplinary. Now, what is interdisciplinary? Looking at one discipline from the perspective of another. Like we looked at literary texts from the perspective of, say, gender or history or anthropology or even medicine. There is one Shakespearean tragedy when one character uh, murders another character by putting a little bit of poison in his ear. And then during that period, if you look at the Elizabethan period, you see that a medicine man took out a book where he had written the best way of killing one person is by putting some poison in his ear. So the medicine man had written that book, and probably Shakespeare used that idea. I will not call Shakespeare a plagiarist. I will rather say this is intertextual. This is polyphonic. This is intertextuality. So that was interdisciplinary research. And transdisciplinary research is when you actually get into the research. Look at Amitabh Ghosh. Amitabh Ghosh is one of the most famous Indian writers in English. He is an anthropologist. So he uses his anthropology, research of his anthropology in the written texts, his novels, his fiction. His novels are full of anthropological research. The Ibis trilogy, he has written through three very thick, big novels on the called the Ibis trilogy, where three novels are about the opium trade from India to the West through China. So he talks about India, China, and European relationships. And in between, he gives very beautiful love stories. There is one lady, Aditi, and she is married to some high caste person with whom she doesn't have a good marriage. So then she falls in love with a Dalit, a tribal, a Dalit. And then she runs away with that Dalit. She gets into the ship to the lower deck of the ship, in which opium is transported from India to Europe through China. So they have that kind of exposure to Indian culture, Chinese culture, ocean humanities. Just now I told about ocean humanities, blue humanities. So an exposure to the sea narratives are there. Finally, when they reach Europe, their life has completely changed. So in one novel, the introduction, how Aditi gets into the ship. Another novel, she reaches China, and then how, the things in China are complicated and how she handles a whole lot of things. And the third novel, where Aditi is no more, but Aditi's cave paintings. She used to paint some things in the caves. So Aditi's cave paintings are exposed to the world, through which we know the narrative, through which we know a lot of things about the civilization. So this is transdisciplinary research. And multidisciplinary research is when you create a new department or a new discourse by collaborating or by creating a collaboration between multiple disciplines. Like we have anthropology, we have literature, we have history, and then you create a new department of, say, cultural studies. A new department like cultural studies can take up whole lot of disciplines together and create a new pedagogy, a new text. Today we are trying to create multidisciplinary research. See, if I will give you some example. When we were teachers, new teachers, we had only UGC net examination in English literature for us. And just a couple of one or two questions from English used, I mean, from folk literature used to be a part of the English UGC net examination. But when I introduced when I introduced MA in folk literature from my university with almost 20,000 pages in print, everything is open access. You can download and read everything. So when we created a new department of folk literature, then the students didn't have employment. I mean, I thought the students will not have employment after doing an MA in folk literature. So we created UGC net folk literature. If you go to the UGC website and type folk literature syllabus in exam number 71, you will get a complete detailed syllabus of folk literature, where we have taken folk texts from India and folk theories from the West. So I don't think too many books are still there in folk theories in India, because folklore is almost a new discipline. But you have to take the Western theories for the interpretation and the discussion of folk, and we have taken Indian literary texts in English translation and also in Hindi translation. So that folklore net exam is purely multilingual. There are Hindi literature texts, there are English literature texts, and there are texts from other Bhasha literatures in the country, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. We have tried not to leave any state from Kashmir to Kanyakumari from which folk texts have not become a part of the UGC net examination. So, don't you think that we have created a multidisciplinary platform here? That we have taken folk theories from the West, literary texts from India through translation. Because there is nothing like Indian folk literature in English. There is Indian writing in English, but there is nothing like Indian folk literature in English. So for folk, we have to depend on translation. So translation pedagogy. Then we have taken film studies, folklore and film, folklore and gender, folklore and anthropology, folklore and history, even folklore and public administration. Then folk jokes. We have taken folk jokes. And then folklore and nationality and nationhood. How during the freedom struggle of India, people used a lot of folklore, because so many rural areas were there. If you talk literary theories, they will not understand. So we used folk as a part of our music, folk dance and music, to create nationalism in people. So those kind of things are introduced as a part of the UGC net folk literature. Many people thought that folklore is dance and music, Nach Gana. Somebody told me, Nandini, what are you doing? This is Nach Gana. But folklore is very scientific. So many interesting and important theories are there in folk literature and folk languages. We have tried to use those in a multidisciplinary manner. We have created a new discipline by introducing an MA program with 20,000 pages and a net examination, by which the students will be empowered. But there is, unfortunately, many universities have translation studies. Even in Hindi University, where I am the rather new vice chancellor, we have a translation studies department. But in the UGC, there is no net examination in translation studies. So many people, there are many, even IGNO, we have a department, we have a school of translation studies, SOTST, School of Translation Studies and Training. So students do their MA programs from SOTST, and then they have to write the NET examination in other disciplines. So they have to do another MA. Because doing, suppose after BA in Hindi, or after BA in English, or BA in Gujarati or Marathi, somebody gets into SO, School of Translation Studies, and does an MA in Translation Studies, then where will the student go? With a BA, you cannot write. With a BA in Hindi, you cannot write UGC NET Hindi. With BA in English, you cannot write UGC NET in English. And your MA is not considered because there is no UGC NET examination. So the students get into some other disciplines after doing translation studies MA. They get into their own languages. Like English people come back to English to do MA. Hindi people go back to Hindi to do an MA. Then they write UGC NET in Hindi or English. So there are 2 years of MA program in translation studies do not really help them to get into employment in a big way. Usually translators are not very well paid. Translation and editing, those are rather quote unquote thankless jobs for many people. Translators do a lot of hard work. It's so difficult to translate. I was trying to translate some texts from Odia to English. I could not find parallel words, so I dropped the translation. Though I am a creative writer with 23 books, my books are always Amazon's bestseller. They're taught in many universities all over the world, but I could not translate because I didn't get the parallel words to do a perfect translation. And when I'm not perfect, I will not publish. So translation is so difficult, such a big challenge. But because translation is not a multidisciplinary department, as you questioned, it's not a multidisciplinary department because it doesn't have a UGC NET examination, and consequently, it doesn't have exact employment in higher education. So we could not create a multidisciplinary research vis-a-vis translation studies. So in Hindi University, when I came, the students from translation studies, they came to me, talked to me about their problems. They were from Hindi, English, Bangla, and many departments from BA. So they did BA Bangla, MA Bangla, or I mean BA Bangla, then came to translation. They did BA Hindi, then came to translation. Some of them are from English. So they didn't have employment because there was no UGC NET exam. So somehow we helped them to get into Rajbhasha as Rajbhasha Adhikari or some places, but they wanted to be professors. They wanted to be teachers. And to be a professor, the first step is UGC NET. So now I have submitted a request to the UGC to introduce translation studies as a part of UGC NET examination, and I'm working on that. So let us see. Let's hope that we are going to be successful in introducing translation studies as a part of our, UGC NET examination, so that our students will have some direction. So I'm glad that you asked me this particular question. When it is multidisciplinary research, it should have employability. It should have a base. It should have a pedagogy. So these are the things that we have to consider in these kind of programs where many people from various disciplines are together. Hindi, its literary and cultural manifestations, they occupy a unique position in India's multilingual and multicultural landscapes. It is a language of the people. Hindi is a language of people. uh, I think everyone in India speaks in Hindi. When I went to Delhi from Orissa in the year 2005, December 31st, when I went, I was not able to speak even a single word in Hindi. I was from Orissa, my training was in English. So I knew only Odia and English. But later on, being exposed to Delhi, talking to people, common people, I picked some spoken Hindi. Then I found the language very, very fascinating. It's a very beautiful and a very euphonic and a soft language, which is so beautiful to the ear. In Oriya, you call it Shruti Madhur, something that is so good to the ear, so beautiful. So in English, you call it euphonic. The contradiction to it is cacophonic. I think no Indian language is cacophonic, which is so harsh to the ear. There are many languages worldwide which can be so cacophonic. Some languages, when they're talking, you will feel they're fighting, but they're not actually fighting. They're just talking, isn't it? But Indian languages are very, very soft. And Hindi is one of the very softest and most sophisticated languages that we have heard. And Hindi is the language of the people. It's the repository of the oral traditions. Hindi oral traditions are very fascinating, very important. And Hindi is an evolving medium of digital and academic discourses. Interestingly, almost all the Hindi departments in the country are introducing digital humanities. I was wondering why English departments are introducing so much of digital humanities. Maybe because of their influence of Bollywood, of cinema, of OTT platforms. So much of Hindi is spoken and used in the preservation of the heritage and humanities through ICT, through information and communication technology. So, and then we require a methodological shift from viewing Hindi as a mere linguistic system to perceiving Hindi as something like a living archive. In our MA program in folklore and culture studies, so we have some chapters on memory culture. We call that Nemo culture. You can just jot down MNEMO, Nemo culture. Now, what is Nemo culture? Memory culture. Mithilanchal. See, Hindi is related to Avadhi, then Mithilanchali, so many languages, many languages are influential factors for Hindi, and Hindi has also influenced many languages. So, in such cases, when you talk about memory studies or history and historiography or ethnomusicology, what is ethnomusicology? History is written by the winner, whoever is the winner, like Alexander the Great or Napoleon Bonaparte. They have written history, or they have got history written glorifying their victory. Now, what happens to the history of the so called loser? I will not call anyone a loser, so I said so called loser. What happens to the history of the loser? Folklorists and the ethnomusicologists write that in folk languages. Look at the Hindi folk languages. Khub Ladi Mardani, O To Jhansi Wali. These are very folk poems which speak about a people's culture, the memory culture, the Nemo culture, people's memory. So Hindi definitely is people's language. It's such a flexible language that it is associated with humanities, the humanitarian attitude of a people of or a culture is so closely associated, so closely merged with Hindi language that sometimes I am overwhelmed to look at the vastness of the language, the scope of the language, the flexibility, the inclusivity of the language. No true scholar of Hindi or no real reader of Hindi will ever conclude that English or any other language is a predator that is a threat or that is harming Hindi language, because Hindi language is so vast and so independent in itself, such a powerful, such a Himalayan language in itself, that it cannot shake by any other language. Rather, Hindi has been influencing many other languages in India and otherwise. So, Hindi includes linguistic heritage, oral and performative traditions, ethical philosophies, and narrative epistemologies. So, there are many traditions like Latin American literatures, Hispanic literature, Native American women's poetry, cultural studies, ecofeminism, eco-criticism. So all these theoretical bases, they are taking up Hindi literary texts as their case studies, and we have used those as a part of our research in our coursework. So my research today, it examines Hindi as a civilizational heritage, not just as a language, rather Hindi as a civilizational heritage, a historical continuum, and a cultural genealogy. So these are my three research points for today. It's a civilizational heritage. Hindi talks about civilizations, the cultural exchanges. I will give you examples from many texts related to that. Then historical continuum, continuity and continuum. They are little bit related, but continuum is something like oral written continuum. So there was oral literature till one point. People passed on the oral literatures from generation to generation through orality, by singing, by speaking, and then we started documenting them. When I introduced PG diploma in folklore in my university in the year 2007, then many folklorists, quote unquote, folklorists, quote. They came to challenge that anything that is documented loses its orality, thus it loses its folkloristic. So any written literature is not folk literature anymore. They came up with that proposition. But my answer to that, in fact, before the Ministry of Culture, because we need a lot of money to design a course, we print 10,000 copies of the study material, which was like thousands and thousands of pages, 10,000 copies at one go for the students. We are People's University with 8.85 million students. So we need to print a lot of study material, so a lot of money is required. I had to give that presentation before the ministry to get that money. At that time, I was a very young teacher. Now I am the administrator, so probably I will be in a more confident position to get things approved or approve the things myself. But at that point, I had to go through Agni Pariksha. I had to go through the fire tests. I had to tell them why folklore. Somebody said folklore to नाच गाना है. आप क्यों कर रहे हो? Then somebody said folklore to say the dance music. So that's it. So at that point, I had to prove them that we romanticize folklore. We put folklore at a distance. That is why till today, basically in English departments, we have British literature, American literature, Canadian studies. That's it. We don't have anything else. Whereas our English students were badly in need of Indian cultural heritages, Indian folklore, and the scientific approach to Indian folklore. They badly needed those kind of courses. For that, I had to do a need assessment survey, which was a qualitative and quantitative data technique research methodology. I had to prepare some questionnaires, thousands and thousands of pages, and send that to many stakeholders of folk literature. And the stakeholders, their age groups were 19 years to 97 years. My students, my youngest PhD student is 24 years. My oldest PhD student is 98 years. So that is the range of my students in IGNOU and otherwise. So we sent those questionnaires to our students, and then they wrote that they need folk literature. They wanted to study folk literature, then the kind of folk literature they wanted to study, they mentioned that to us. On the basis of that, we designed the courses on folk literature. We did an experts committee meeting by inviting the best brains of the country, Padma Bhushans, Padma Vibhushans, and then I design a syllabus, I get it approved by them. And then you call many people to write your courses, including myself. Of course, I wrote so many chapters myself, but writing 20,000 pages is not allowed in any kind of program. You cannot write entirely yourself. So we have to take the help of the best brains and the best researchers. So many people, I think many of you might have already written chapters for IGNOU. When we got the chapters written, I saw that the people are talking about the oral written continuum. Some oral cultures of some states, like Chhattisgarhi folk. Somebody told me that, man, I know some Chhattisgarhi folk, which some music I have heard from my grandmother. I want to document it. I said, you have to do one thing. Take interviews with your grandmother and maybe some of her generation who are seamlessly singing that folk song. Use it as a part of your YouTube. Suppose 10 people or 15 people are singing the same song of Chhattisgarhi folk. So that is established oral folk. You take YouTubes from that. First, establish that this is authentic oral folk literature everybody is using. Every state has some authentic oral folk, which is called intangible cultural heritage. Now you have to make it tangible. How do you do that? After you have documented everybody's folk songs, you write some research on the basis of that. You use Western theorization, you can use Vladimir Propp, or you can use Foucault or Derrida or anyone, all those, theorists, structuralism, post-structuralism, gender discourses, feminism, masculinity studies, queer studies. You can use those kind of backgrounds as your theorization, and then you interpret those folk songs. So give the oral folk narratives as a part of the YouTube's a link in your study material, then translate those to English and write it as a part of the chapter. Then the interpretation should be theorization. Then there can be check your progress, there can be possible questions, there can be some projects. For the students, MFCP 005 is a project where Chhattisgarhi folk projects are coming. So, that's how you have to create a pedagogy. You are a teacher. You cannot just interpret and reinterpret a written test. That becomes so uncreative, if that is a word, and so much redundant. If somebody we are only interpreting Shakespeare, Shelley, Keats, and Byron time and again. I am trained in British literature. I have been teaching British literature and American literature since 2 decades. I have designed many courses on British romantic poetry, on American poetry and drama, and all of that because that is my mainstream study. But also, as a teacher, past 2 decades or more, I have tried to create multidisciplinary research, like Sir just asked, what is multidisciplinary research? You create it. You have learned through interdisciplinary research, through transdisciplinary research, then you create through multidisciplinary research. How do you create? During my PhD in Shantiniketan, I was very, very young, 20 years ago. I used to come to Shantiniketan from Odisha to Bolpur. I used to travel by a train. And once you enter West Bengal, once you enter, lot of bowl singers, bowl git gaate hain na, so they used to enter the train. They used to sing a lot of songs, Maner Manush, and then so many beautiful, beautiful folk songs of the of West Bengal, the rich folk songs the bowl singers used to sing. Then at that time, I didn't have a smartphone, of course, so I had a recorder. I used to record interviews of the poets on whom I was working for my PhD. So I paid some money to the bowl singers from my fellowship. I was on a junior research fellowship. Then I recorded their songs, folk songs, bowl git, and then I translated those to English by giving copyright to the singers, mentioning their name. Mr. So and so was the folk singer for this bowl git, and then the meaning of that bowl git. How Rabindranath Tagore was deeply influenced by bowl philosophy, by Lolon Fakir. Tagore was influenced. So, giving that kind of credit to the singer and to the original researcher or original stakeholder, whatever, the originator of that particular research, you have to give the copyright. You are teachers of language and literature, you know how copyright issues and plagiarism can be a serious issue. So, you have to give that copyright and then you make your own interpretation by Indian and Western theorization. So, that is what is the multidisciplinary research. So, by multidisciplinary research, what I mean is creation of a new discipline by taking the ideas and the pedagogy from many, many disciplines. So Hindi heritage is not confined to modern standard language codified in the 19th century. It stretches across a continuum that includes so many like Avadi, Brajbhasha, Khadi Boli, Apabhransh Bhasha. So many languages have influenced Hindi or they have been influenced by Hindi. You have to also give a dedicated framework and a dedicated intellectual property right to the languages from which you have taken your research and you are working on your Hindi. Then so you have to talk about the pluralism and the regional interconnectedness of Hindi language. Poets like Kabir, Surdas, Tulsidas, Rahim, and Bihari, they used vernacular. Vernacular is not the right word anymore, bhasha. For vernacular, we are using the term bhasha. They used vernacular idioms to democratize shared knowledge systems, translating the Bhakti movement into a cultural revolution in Hindi literature. These traditions reflect the vernacular humanism in India, a philosophy that resists exclusivism, so something that you exclude. They resist that and they invite participation from a social strata. Everyone has to participate. Hindi heritage is neither singular nor hegemonic, so it is polyphonic archive. As I said, polyphony. Polyphony is intertextual, taking so many things together. It is a polyphonic archive of lived experiences, mythologies, and social consciousness. The tradition of Hindi ethics in expressionism is also equally important. The textual history of Hindi from Ritikal to Karyapad and also to the Naik Kahani tradition. Hindi teachers will be more, uh, conversant with Naik Kahani tradition to Dalit and feminist writings. They demonstrate the language's, uh, you know, uh, flexibility and the vastness in changing the cultural and the political climates of the country. Each phase of Hindi, it foregrounds an ethical concern and a love and devotion to medieval poetry and then to romantic humanism in early modern literature, existential realism in post-independence narratives, and justice in contemporary writings. So, looking at Hindi through humanities and multidisciplinary research is my objective here to talk to you. The study of Hindi, it aligns with the interdisciplinary references to humanities by Hindi and comparative humanities by talking about that. Then translation and epistemic plurality. So there are many things that you can talk about in the inclusion of Hindi and other languages in your syllabus by an interdisciplinary research or by an exchange of ideas. Just give me 1 second, I'll close the door.
Hello. क्या कर रहे हैं? हम्म। पोस्ट मैट्रिक का कुछ भी लंबित नहीं है। पोस्ट मैट्रिक का कुछ भी लंबित नहीं है, सब पूरा है। सब पूरा है, कोई भी जो है काम अधूरा नहीं है।
Sorry. Oh, now next I would prefer to give you a little bit of information about translation studies vis-a-vis the different Indian languages like Assamese folk ballads, their translation, Tamil Sangam poetry and their translation, then the epistemic plurality of translation studies, that it provides a theoretical basis for understanding Hindi's interface with other Indian languages. Translation is not a linguistic conversion, but it's an epistemic mediation. I'll give you one example. In the MA program in Folklore and Culture Studies, there is one project, MFCP 005, which deals with a project. And also we have MFC 010, MFC 10, which is a translation project. Some doctor from Saptarjung Hospital, who is a student of the MA Folk Literature program, he came up with a translation project of uh, Unani and Ayurvedic medicines and the knowledge systems thereof from various languages, including Hindi, including English to Hindi. So, in that Hindi translation, the kind of words that he used from English to Hindi, most of them were not legible because medical science, engineering, technology, so these kind of subjects, we have been so thoroughly trained in the English language that when they are translated to Hindi, it becomes difficult for us to understand and to use them in our daily life. So I requested the doctor that your research is not practically helpful to us. It sounds like full of jargons. So what should we do? In such cases, he created footnotes. So there are many occasions when you have to create footnotes when you are directly translating something from English and other foreign languages. Most of the homeopathy medicines are from Germany. So the German Hinman homeopathy medicines, if they are translated to Hindi, and then probably the students will not understand that. In such cases, use of a footnote is very necessary. Linguistic plurality or linguistic flexibility is required in those kind of cases, and in such cases digital humanities helps you. I'm sure that as teachers you have been exposed to digital humanities today. Some of the speakers in this program might also be speaking on digital humanities. In one of the digital humanities classes, a student asked me, Madam, what is digital humanities in simple language? Then I said, it's a very complex thing. To explain it in simple language, what do you think about it? And the student said, digital humanities is text on screen. Which is partially correct, text on screen, but we have also been dealing with many other things rather than only text on screen through digital humanities. We have qualitative and quantitative data technique and the researches thereof. We have preservation policies. We have interview techniques. So we have many things like preservation of texts, of dying texts. In the beginning itself, I talked to you about the dying languages of the world from 6 lakh to 6,000 and the preservation of those languages. Now, how to preserve those languages? When I did my own research about language death during the preparation of that program, I took interviews with many last speakers of some languages. For that, I went to Madagascar. I went to some other South African countries. Even I went to the Native American writers like Leslie Merman Silko and Joy Harjo and some of them. I took their researches in English and then translated those to Hindi. So doing it at a level of Western, I mean, especially European and American traditions was not so difficult, but doing language preservation in Indian rural areas was very, very difficult. I went to a group of people called the Kui language speakers. Then I told them that yours is an endangered language. They didn't agree to that. So it's difficult, it's a challenge to convince the dying language groups that their language is endangered. They will never agree to that. So the first part is creating a scope for yourself for the preservation, convincing them that theirs is a dying language, creating some kind of flexibility and inclusivity of their languages with the mainstream languages. So they like the way some Hindi speakers may feel that English is a predator. The tribal and folk languages they think that Hindi is a predator, but my contention is no language is a predator for the other. So you have to convince. So it was difficult for me to convince the Kui language speakers. Then how did I preserve their languages, Kui language? I asked them to sing some songs in Kui because their songs were so rich. They sang about the creation myth. They sang about their marriages, childbirth, the rituals, so many rituals, and every ritual has a song, a very lengthy, very long musical song they have. So I documented the Kui language in the form of songs first. And then I got them translated by the help of people who were either speaking Kui to Odia or Kui to Odia to English. I took help from those people. Uh, and then I documented them as a part of the course material. And then I interpreted that, I preserved that. So digital humanities helped me to document, to preserve in the form of CD-ROMs, sending those to www, the World Wide Web, and creating websites, creating channels through which preserve. You can preserve endangered and dying languages and cultures. So you can take something from intangible cultural heritage to the tangible cultural heritage, and for that, digital humanities and the new frontiers are helpful. Many people do not exactly know how to use internet or how to use digital humanities in a very positive manner. The other people are using digital humanities, I mean, people are using AI for plagiarism. We are doing a research. We did Fuji's Hindi University Journal of Interdisciplinary Studies, and we are going to launch it in December. We received many papers where the similarity index, which is plagiarism from AI, was more than 80%. So people are using AI not for productive things, rather they are using AI for copying or for plagiarism. In the era of digital humanities, Hindi finds renewed relevance as a career of indigenous archives. Rather, you should use it that way. Digitization of manuscripts. There are so many important manuscripts of which there are only talpatti or pothi. Those things are available. You have to digitize those and create proper archives and websites where you post those things. And then indigenous cooking, the cuisine and the medicine, folk cuisine, folk medicines, those are also dying traditions. I am not telling you that if we have a heart attack we should go to some folk medicine. We will definitely go to the allopathic doctor. But yes, for the holistic well-being of our life or of our body and mind, probably those knowledge systems will be very, very helpful. If you use it for an extended period of time, probably those things are going to help you. And for that we have to take the help of digitization, digital humanities. I was speaking to an allopathy doctor who is a very high profile allopathy doctor. I asked him that I went to his house and I saw a lot of homeopathy and Ayurvedic medicines which he was using. I said, "You are an allopathy doctor and you are using these. Why?" Then we had a very simple kind of a conversation. He said, allopathy medicines are peer reviewed medicines, like you have peer reviewed journals. Like, right, in English or Hindi or any literature, we publish in a peer reviewed journal, we get API points like 10 points, 5 points API points we get. But when you write those research papers, don't you go to some YouTubes or some researches which may not be peer reviewed, which may be just information for you. Like, you go to those indigenous knowledge systems or traditional knowledge systems which may not be peer reviewed but which may be very helpful. So he said, for me, allopathy medicine is peer reviewed, research oriented method, but Ayurvedic and homeopathy medicines are the base. They are the supplementary material, they are the knowledge base on which we depend. So we have to depend on those things. Allopathy medicines were not created overnight, they were created over a period of continuous research, over a period of continual research. In this context, I am reminded about a course that we designed for IGNO before I left for 4 years. In December, I took leave for 4 years and came in January. I designed a course for the School of Engineering and Technology. The name of the course was Stories from Epics, Puranas, and Siddhantas, and that is a 6 credits value enhancement, value based course for the Department of Engineering and Technology. And the Vice Chancellor of the university made it, she approved that it should be a part of all the courses in the university, be it engineering, medicine, science, technology, or humanities, social sciences, anything. It can be a part of that, because in that course I have taken, that course was designed by me. I submitted and I came, the submitted the print orders and came here. We have taken Surya Siddhanta, Pancha Siddhantika, Siddhant Shiromani kind of texts, where uh, Vedic Ganit, scientific methods, technological issues are dealt with. We have taken chapters on Kurukshetra and the geometrical patterns. How Abhimanyu got into the Kurukshetra by understanding half of the geometry, because after that in the story his mother slept, so he had not understood the other half of the geometry, so he could not come out. That chapter which I wrote, because I have some of science background, so when I wrote that chapter in collaboration with somebody from mathematics background, the chapter is entirely mathematics, entirely geometry, the geometry of Kurukshetra. Little bit of narrative is there, again lot of geometrical patterns there, and then Abhimanyu gets into the Kurukshetra. And then Abhimanyu is trapped. He cannot come out. He tries to recollect the geometry by which he can come out of the Kurukshetra, but he cannot come out. So, we have used traditional knowledge systems and mythical stories, but also we have used a lot of mathematics and geometry to be a part of the course. And then we have one chapter on surrogacy and childbirth. How Kunti, Madri, and so many characters from our mythological texts, they can exchange their pregnancy. Balram was about to be born to Devaki, then because she is threatened, so she transferred her pregnancy to somebody else. I am not claiming any science there. It's not scientific that one cannot transfer one's pregnancy to another person. But the idea of surrogacy was very much there. Even there is one chapter on Pushpak Viman and aviation technology. We have written that chapter entirely on the basis of the Ramayana, but we have not claimed anywhere there is any science. That somebody called Ravan actually had a Pushpak Viman like an aeroplane which he was flying. We haven't claimed it, but we have given credit to the power of imagination of our knowledge system. That in our Indian knowledge systems, there is that kind of an imagination where somebody can fly without a locomotive. Locomotive जो चक्का, बिना wheel का एक जगह से दूसरे जगह आप जा सकते हैं by flying. How would you fly? This technology. And for that, I have taken the help of some folk Ramayans. My poetry collection, Sita, it's a long poem of 25 cantos. Now it's going to be revised with 50 cantos. In that book, I have, when I wrote that poetry collection, Sita, which is being taught in many Indian and foreign universities, if you just check Nandini Sahu's Sita, a poem, you will find whole lot of information on that. So when I wrote that poetry book, Sita, I read 300 Ramayans, out of which two were so-called mainstream. Valmiki and Ramcharitmanas were two, I'm putting it quote unquote mainstream, because as a folklorist, I don't agree that something is mainstream and something is marginal note. For me, all the texts have equal weightage. as a folklorist. In Indian knowledge systems, there is no Margi and Deshi dichotomy. Margi, classical, Deshi, folk. To me, Margi and Deshi, they exchange hands, they influence contemporary literature in English, Hindi, and all Indian languages equally. So, Indian literatures are equally influenced by folk traditions and classical traditions. So when I read those 300 Ramayans, 298 versions of the Ramayana were folk texts, folk Ramayans, Madhav Kandali. So many, go to South India, there are so many Ramayans. So I read so many Ramayans from different parts of the country and otherwise. You go to Thailand, Bali, you go to Sri Lanka, Indonesia, everyone has a Ramayana. We should not claim that Ramayana is only Indian. Ramayana has also so many foreign traditions. So many countries have their own share of the Ramayana. So I read many versions of the Ramayana, the folk Ramayans, where they have given interesting documentation. One of the folk Ramayans, if you want to know more about it, you can just check my Sita or I will send it to you. Just email me, don't call me, send me a mail. I'll always share my books with you. So, one folk Ramayana claims that the Pushpak Viman was created by some kind of knowledge system which was purely mathematical and geometrical. Even folklore talks about geometry. So we have taken examples from those folk Ramayans, the tribal Ramayans, and then we have created a course where we have given credit to the knowledge systems and their power of imagination rather than claiming any kind of aviation technology. The title of the chapter is Pushpak Viman and the aviation technology. The concluding part of the chapter says that aviation technology is very modern, very contemporary, very scientific. Yes, no doubt about it. But yes, aviation technology has also some parallel thinking process, some parallel knowledge system in our traditional folk knowledge systems where they had the power of imagination that something like this can actually fly. Something like this can actually, you know, uh, uh, go to the sky, go to the air, and then it will rapidly transport one person from one place to another without the use of wheels. In one Ramayan, in folk Ramayan, he says that I do not want to take Sita by wheels. Sita is such a divine character. She's such a spiritually great character. I want to bring her through the heavens. So he creates the Pushpak Biman with the help of some technology that is mentioned in the folk Ramayana, which is not real. I emphasize it's purely imagination. He talks about that, and then the Pushpak Biman is created. So in our knowledge systems, again, digital humanities has its own base. It has its own flexibility in the Indian languages and Indian knowledge systems. The Indian language heritage is marked by fluidity, then interconnectedness and mutual translations. Languages have their connections. Like you look at Hindi, the Ganga Jamuna Tehzeeb of North India, it reflects a cultural syncretism where words, idioms, and metaphors freely flow across the boundaries. Somebody told me 10 कोस में भाषा बदल जाता है. Say that I feel that's so interesting. If you go to North India, you go to UP, MP, Bihar, Delhi, and then all those places, Haryana and Punjab, and many other Hindi speaking areas, हर 10 कोश में भाषा बदल जाता है, भाषा अलग अलग हो जाता है. And we are non Hindi speaking people. So when we speak in Hindi, we try to be very correct. We try to be very, very correct grammatically and syntactically and according to pronunciation and accent, we try to be very correct. So in such cases, we do not know what exactly is our influence. If you go to South Delhi, like I am a South Delhi person living in Saket. So Saket, South Delhi Hindi is much different from Delhi 6. You will know that. So Delhi 6, that area, or maybe Connaught Place area. So in South Delhi, Malvi Nagar, Lajpat Nagar, and that area, there's, IIT, JNU, and IGNO, and those areas, their Hindi is actually different from Hindi spoken by some other parts of the city itself. So one city, so many variations of Hindi. So one whole country, so many variations of the language. If you come to Bengal and Orissa, the kind of Hindi Odias and Bengalis or even Northeastern people will speak can sometimes be hilarious, isn't it? So the Hindi can be different, the accent can be different, the usage of words can be different. They can sometimes Hindyize some Odia words. Like I remember somebody who was speaking in Hindi in Orissa, and then he wanted to say सामने जो दुकान है वहां से कुछ ले लो. He is telling आग में जो दुकान है वहां से ले लो, because in Oriya that is आगे आगरे जो दुकान अच्छी. So he actually translated something to Hindi. He thought in his mind in Odia and he spoke in Hindi. So he used that kind of Hindi language. But yes, communication. So he could communicate. So, like in the beginning itself, Ram Pravesh ji said that language is a medium of communication. Language is something that is flexible, and rather than being judgmental about somebody's language, if we are open about accepting the language, and if there is a grammatical or syntactical error, probably we can correct it. But we should not be very rigid about the acceptance of any language. If somebody is trying to speak a particular language, rather we should give credit to that person. Many English people come to India and then they use very bad Indian languages. I mean, they speak Indian languages with full of which are full of mistakes. Still, they do, and we find it very funny and very interesting. But if we go abroad and if you go to Europe or America and you use bad English, probably they will not be so flexible about it. They would expect you to be more fluent and more correct in grammar, which is not the right way to approach a language. The first step, language learning has three steps. First step definitely will have challenges, maybe mistakes, and the second step would be the reading writing step, and the third step is reading, writing, and speaking fluently. Speaking is very difficult. Like when I try to speak in Bangla, Odia comes out because I'm Odia by birth. And Odia and Bangla are so similar, but I can write Bangla now. I have learned the language. I took a few months to learn the language and I can write, but speaking is bit of difficult. Even in medical science, it said that people who learn a lot of languages may have less chance of getting into Alzheimer or forgetfulness when they grow old. It's written in some medical science journals and articles, if you look at that, because the brain has multiple cells. And if you learn one language, one cell is totally occupied and activated. So if you learn 10 languages, 10 of your brain cells are completely occupied, completely transported, and completely, what should I say, productive. Very, very productive. So there is no scope of forgetfulness. Why does somebody get into Alzheimer's or forgetfulness or dementia, those kind of forgetful diseases, when I won't call it a disease, it's a condition, when they grow old? Like when my father was 76, he forgot that he's 76. He thought we were small children. He used to call me, "You are 5 years old." So he got into Alzheimer. And sometimes he was normal. Sometimes he thought that I was doing PhD, that was my age. And then sometimes he thought that I am a 5 years old girl, and then he wanted me to recite something from class 5 or class 1. So those diseases, medical science says that by learning many languages, you can challenge dementia, not Alzheimer's, dementia. So forgetfulness can be challenged. So that must be correct. Because I have seen some people who know many languages, they are very active. So that's how I try to train myself in many languages, at least writing of a language, if not speaking. When it is speaking, somehow English becomes my thinking and speaking language. If there is one issue, I start thinking in English. It happens to me. It can happen to anybody. If you are using one language for a longer period of time, now I'm using this only language for last, say, 25 years or so. So this it has become a thinking language for me. But the language of writing can be many. So today, when we are talking so much about Hindi language and its influence on other languages or other languages and their influence on Hindi, and why Hindi is not only a critical language but one of our one of our official languages, then lot of things come to our mind, and then one thing comes to my mind: the role of Hindi in contemporary humanities. What is the role of Hindi in contemporary humanities? In a globalized and digitally interconnected India, Hindi plays many critical roles. One is the pedagogical role. As a medium of education, Hindi can bridge the gaps between many languages if one wants to take it positively. Though I have not been educated in Hindi, but now when I go to many parts of the country, uh, Kashmir to Kanyakumari, wherever you go for your daily needs, if you ask anyone anything in Hindi, your purpose is
अच्छा
solved. So it can be the
हम्म,
medium of education
हाँ
to play the role to
हाँ
fill
हाँ
out the gaps
ठीक है
between many, but it can again, you look at the NEP document,
ठीक
the
ठीक
ABCD of languages. Just check ABCD of languages in the NEP document. The NEP document uses the word
तो
language
मैडम
202
कहिए
times. It
हाँ
speaks
कहिए
about family languages, about state languages, about official languages. India doesn't have a national language, so it talks about official languages of India. So, do we want to use any particular language as a medium of
अच्छा
instruction? Then we
ठीक
should
है
feel
आप वो
free.
उसमें
No one
ग्रुप में
should
भेज
stop
दीजिएगा
any state
फिर हम
if they want to use Hindi as their medium of education or instruction. No one should challenge that if the state has that state policy. Also, they should not
मैंने
impose.
ग्रुप
Neither
पे
they
मतलब
should
वो बड़े भाई
stop
को
them
अभी
from
ग्रुप में भेज
using the
दीजिए
language, nor it should be imposed
हाँ
on anyone. It should be
ठीक
flexible. Like in Hindi University, West Bengal, where I am the vice chancellor, we have students from marginal communities. They come from Assam, Seoul, and many other, very far off places. They come to Howrah station. From there, they come to the university, and all our seats are filled out in the very first instance. Our seats are filled out, though it's a marginalized people. It's a marginal people's university where people are from very poor backgrounds and all of that. And our medium of instruction is Hindi, English. They are Hindi, English, and Bangla. Our teachers are using three languages, and I'm not rigid about any language. The student, even in IGNO, in the folk literature program that I designed, the entire material is in English, but students are writing bilingual. They're writing their exams in English and Hindi, and even we evaluate our answer scripts in Hindi. We take some experts from Hindi departments with folklore knowledge, and then we get those evaluated by them. Then Hindi can also play a cultural role by serving as a cultural archive, preserving the oral, folk, and performative traditions and art forms. Hindi can do it because if it is preserved in Hindi, probably many people in the country will be in a position to understand it. And then Hindi can be used in the interlingual manners by bridging the languages between regions, promoting a pan-Indian cultural literacy. Hindi can play a global role with the growing diaspora and digital presence. Diaspora people are also doing a lot of Hindi. So many World Hindi conferences are happening. You also might be attending some of those. The World Hindi conferences are happening in many countries. That was the last time, that was, I think, in Mauritius. A lot of Hindi speaking and writing people are there in Mauritius. So the World Hindi conference was very important there. So, however, the role must remain dialogic rather than dominant. I emphasize only one thing: the role of Hindi should remain dialogic. It should be flexible rather than dominant, inclusive rather than instrumental, and ethical rather than political. Language and language is never political. Language is always ethical, cultural, pluralistic. Language can never be political. Then let us move towards a humanistic paradigm of languages. How the human question should be asked: how does a language help to understand what it means to be human? So, a humanistic approach for Hindi language as a model should integrate cultural studies, exploring social narratives, philosophy, like rethinking Indian humanism, then aesthetic, talking about dhwani, and auchitya and such other emotions in Indian poetics, then digital and ecological humanities, rethinking the human nature interface. We are talking about Anthropocene today. For years and years, we thought that human beings are the best creations of the planet. But COVID proved it otherwise. That we are not the best creations. Animals and plants, all of them are equally important like us. The only difference is what they speak we don't understand. But they have the power to dominate us if we challenge them. So the digital and the ecological humanities, it talks about Anthropocene and anthropomorphism. animal studies, human studies, and all of that. And then translation and comparative studies. In Hindi University, we are coming up with a new department, comparative world literature, where we're talking about many languages in the world and how we can translate them to Hindi and English and make those a part of our theorization and our pedagogy, our courses. Then we are thinking about theorizing the hermeneutic based models for Hindi studies. We are thinking about cultural studies, exploring the social narratives. Then we are talking about also the encoding, decoding kind of theoretical framing. Then culture as a lived experience. Then Bakhtin's dialogism is something that you can think about in order to think about many languages inclusive. So we have to talk about textual interpretations also, like Munshi Premchand, and then his texts and bhakti poets like Kabir and Tulsidas, and how they have influenced world literatures. We can talk about Nai Kahani and the Dalit writings, how they have become so interesting and important in the research and publications and classroom teaching today. We have to rethink the research and pedagogical consequences, course design and methodological archiving. We have to rethink about those things. That is what in the beginning I said, that we have to go multidisciplinary, create new disciplines by rethinking your research and pedagogical consequences. Think about your methodologies. Think about your research questions in the classroom. Ask yourself, when I go to the classroom, am I only passing time or doing some of my research, or am I being useful to the students? In Hindi University, I take classes every week, 3 to 4 classes I take. They say that the VC madam is taking class, but then I like to take my classes. I'm delivering so many, like today there is one lecture, yesterday I had one lecture, every day I have one lecture somewhere or other. If I don't have a lecture outside, I take one lecture in the university where I teach research methodology. And the students anyway come, and all the teachers also come and sit in my classes. And we have one inter, so 9 to 10 in the morning, no, register or nobody will come to me with files. 9 to 10 or 9 to 10:30, 1.5 ghanta, I take a class of regarding theory, literary theories, and research methodologies and all of that. So you can be anything. You can be a registrar, you can be head of the department, you can be anything, but primarily you are a teacher. So I think I'll be a VC for 4 or 5 years, but I think I'll be a creative writer and a teacher forever. So I have to keep on teaching and writing and taking my classes and lectures, because that is my best way of contributing. What I do in the office or how many books I write may not be remembered by people, but how I make people feel in my presence by my classes and my research, by my empathy and compassion, and by my inclusivity will always remain in the hearts of people. So, as teachers, this should be your only way. That you are creating that kind of a pedagogy. People I taught some 25 years ago are still in touch with me. I value human relationships. So I somehow combine between personal relationships and teaching and research, so that you can be more inclusive and all of that. And then you have to think about the aesthetics of many literatures, the theoretical framing, the textual interpretations that I already told you, then the pedagogical consequences. Then you have to guide your students towards Western theories and Indian literary texts, and then you have to help your students to be better creative writers. They might be writing in many languages, so help them to be creative writers. And in this case, I would conclude by saying that we have HUJIS, Hindi University Journal of Interdisciplinary Studies in Hindi University, and I have personally IJLL, that's my journal, Interdisciplinary Journal of Language and Literature. If you are a writer or a researcher and if you want to publish, please get in touch with me through Dr. Ram Pravesh. Take my email ID from him. Send your writings to us for publication. Be a part of our Hindi University Special Lecture Series. Go to YouTube and check Hindi University West Bengal Special Lecture Series on comparative world literatures. In 11 months, we have already 60 lectures on internet. So many of the best scholars from Kashmir to Kanyakumari have spoken for us. If you want to speak for us, please email us, be a part of us, and let me know if I can help you in any way. Thank you and namaskar.
अच्छा, चलिए, थैंक यू। और कोई प्रश्न हो अगर जो भी प्रतिभागी यहाँ पर है, अगर आपकी कोई जिज्ञासा हो तो प्लीज मैम से आप शेयर करें।
मैम, thanking you again that you have given us such a good information about the translation and creation of a discipline out of so many disciplines. So it's a very sound understanding. But you have just said that the role of language in the prevention of diseases. It was quite interesting that you put some example that if you are multilingual, if you have two languages, idea of two languages, you are saved from you can combat diseases like Alzheimer's. So what about the Hindi speaking people? We are from Hindi area and we have too many regional languages. And we know Maithili, we know Bhojpuri. Do they help us in, or you can consider them the same Hindi system?
Dr. Ram Pravesh, you asked a question and you answered to that, isn't it? So the question is, can we Hindi-speaking people learn too many languages? Then the answer was yes. Hindi has so many other languages. Hindi is related to so many other languages. Yes. See, I'm not claiming because I'm not a medical doctor. I have read many research articles from medical sciences, and I had a discussion with a medical doctor after reading those that Alzheimer can be checked when your brain cells are full of very many languages. So probably your answer was correct that Maithili and Bhojpuri and so many other related languages of Hindi, if you are learning them, see, learning a language is always productive, always creative. Learning anything is always productive. So I think you are in the right direction.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am. Jayalakshmi want to ask some questions. Jayalakshmi, ma'am.
जी. Good morning, ma'am. We lecture on Hindi, heritage, and humanities, which refers to multidisciplinary perspective was truly enlightening. Humanities comprise academic discipline